Hey everyone, welcome to the Kentico Rocks podcast. This is episode number 35 of the podcast about all things Kentico Kontent, Kentico Experience, .NET and Azure. This is your host, Brian McKeiver, and I'm excited today because I'm joined by a very good friend of mine, Andy Thompson. Andy, how are you doing?
Really well, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yes, no problem. Actually, I shouldn't say no problem because it's been ridiculous to try to get an hour around this planet that actually lines up with the fact that you're all the way down there in Australia. I'm all the way up here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, U.S. And it's like time travel. It's like the next day there for you, right? It's pretty early.
It is. Yeah, it's the 22nd today, 21st for you, I believe.
Yep, 21st at night.
It has been quite a journey to get here, hasn't it? What, it's been 5 years we've been trying to organise this,
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. We finally made it. Technology has pushed through. We've got the mics, we've got the cameras, we're ready to go. I'm very excited. And
you were even able to rotate the video up the right way.
Right,
which is impressive.
Exactly. But I've known Andy for years. He's the CTO of Luminary, a very fantastic agency down in Australia, who is a partner of mine at BizStreams as well. And I'm just excited to have you here because we have a great topic today. This is going to be a content-focused episode of the podcast where we're going to discuss one of the new features that Kontent has released called Web Spotlight, and Andy has some really great firsthand experience with it, and I'm excited to basically hear what you've done with it, get your opinions, get some insight into how we can leverage it as content developers for our teams, and I'm actually just very excited to have the conversation. So we can kind of dive right in from there. We're looking at content on the screen, and one thing you'll note is that there's an entire mini site around this new feature that Kontent has, because it's more than just like a small feature. It's not just like a checkbox, right? This is something brand new. So, without any further ado, Andy, how would you introduce Web Spotlight to someone who's not heard of it yet in the content and just the overall headless CMS space?
Sure. So, I guess the way I would describe it is to discuss the elephant in the room, really. When you're building websites on a headless CMS, there's no head, there's no website.
Right.
And that's something people, especially from a marketing background, have sort of struggled to come to terms with switching the paradigm. They understand how great structured content and being ready for omni-channel delivery and everything is, but then they log into the CMS and they say, okay, so where's my page? They're used to logging in and saying, okay, they see home page and then they see, what's in the navigation. They click through to a page, they see what's on it, and they start editing. And so what this does is it fills that gap. It gives you a couple of things. It gives you, first of all, that sort of hierarchy, whether you think of that as your navigation or your taxonomy or your information architecture. It presents it in a tree view, which you can see just here in the screenshot. But it also brings your draft or preview site right into the interface and highlights what can be edited, and you can click on it and edit it right there in the interface without having to go off to preview your changes elsewhere, which you usually have to do with a headless CMS. So it's kind of bridging that gap between a headless CMS, which is intentionally separated from web, and bridging that gap to the web if you're using it for web. So this is why they call it the Web Spotlight. I guess it's very web focused.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We have clients that when they first get into headless CMS, and specifically like content, that they see the content inventory screen and they go, okay, that makes sense. But then over time, when they add lots of content items and that inventory grows, their first thought is, well, wait, what's the way to go find this? Because it's really it's a large container of content that you have your normal search and your filters by content type and other things on the side. But I still think when most marketers come to this platform, they're used to where's the tree? Where's the hierarchy? How do I understand where to go find these things? And actually, I like how Kontent has the search and filter features, because I think they've done a fantastic job of that. But this is one more layer on top of the base offering that gives you that way to set up the I don't really want to call it the tree because of our Kentico experience background, but it's a hierarchy. It's a way to do navigation and menus and different things like that.
It is, and it's, if anything, it's a little more flexible because you're not limited to only putting your content tree in there. You might want to use it to actually represent exactly the navigation. Say a lot of the time people have a mega menu that has the pages that they want to show in it that don't necessarily represent every page in the site. And so that's what we've done actually on our own site, is we represent exactly what the navigation shows in Web Spotlight, which makes it much easier for a marketer, because they don't have to go through a taxonomy, or they don't have to think about what the URL is. They just go in and they see exactly what they're used to seeing on the front end of the site.
Right. And I don't really want everyone to think that this is just a preview and an organizational hierarchy. The main value is the fact that you have a new SDK that comes with Web Spotlight that really gives you this like ability to click and edit directly on your preview what you want to change. So can you talk about that a little bit in terms of what this new SDK is, API, however you want to term it, and then that ability to just kind of edit almost just directly in place?
Sure. Yeah. So that's the one of the sort of hidden gems, I think, in this is always before, you used to be able to have a little bit of a sort of a visual experience by having a preview site and use what they called their edit links. And they had a sort of the ability to put a link in your preview site that would link you back into the CMS directly to an item that you were editing. But it was very much up to the developer to do that. What they've done now is they've released what they call the Smart Link Sdk, which is a JavaScript SDK and some CSS to go with it, which allows you to put it into any preview site, and it will you mark it up with some basic information from the CMS, basically what item we're looking at and what field name, and it will actually visually mark up your preview site with the sort of a blue dotted line and an edit link. And when it's in the Web Spotlight interface, that link will actually allow you to go straight to the edit mode for that exact field on that exact item without leaving Web Spotlight at all. So you can just click on it, edit it, and then just keep going in the CMS. So it's very much similar to something, if you're familiar with other CMSs or experience, having the page tab and the preview tab and the tree right there without having to leave the interface, which is really cool. And that's just a JavaScript SDK you drop in your preview site, which is really powerful. Yeah,
I mean, we're kind of looking down through the screen. It's also, you can create items kind of right in the right spot you'd like to as well in the hierarchy, as this screenshot's showing. And we've been talking about the live editing feature. In case you're just listening, I should say that we're at webspotlight.content.ai, just kind of looking through some of the features as we talk to help the conversation along. But I think this solves a need specifically for marketing teams that we've dealt with that have this beautiful design in, say, InVision or other tools that you're sharing designs with. And our job usually comes down to, okay, here's the content model. Here's how we're going to power this layout and this view with these nice images, intro copy, these other form elements. And then, so they have that nice design. That is what they want the end result to be. But then they have to go into the CMS and find, well, wait a minute, what content item do I change? What field in that item? Is it too long? Is it too short? Well, this saves them that time. They don't have to kind of figure it out and do that map themselves. And at BizStream, we've done exercises where we literally, it almost feels like you're taking crayons and you're drawing on a design in red, green, orange, and then you're drawing lines or numbers to the content item fields on the CMS, whether it's content or experience or others. And you're kind of, you're taking crayons on this beautiful design. But now it's the nice blue dotted outline that the SDK gives you.
It's a great point. It's not unique to Headless CMS, this challenge of having to work really hard to give someone a really nice editing experience. I know in previous CMSs as well, you used to have to sometimes really shoehorn your markup into the CMS in order to give someone a really nice visual experience as well. And this decoupling that you see with Headless or with any MVC development really means you can have that beautiful design and then just that really lightweight layer of marking up what's editable and then let the CMS take care of it in a structured way. I think it's a really, really nice way to do it without compromising the design and giving complete design freedom and just saying inside the CMS, this is exact click, edit, done. It's really nice.
Yep. And I know, so this isn't just like a feature that, we've just seen or heard content talk to us about. I mean, obviously we've went through that, but I want to bring up the fact that you've written a nice blog post about this on your blog, because this is something you've actually used in your projects, right?
Yeah. As is tradition, I like to dog food this stuff as soon as it comes out. So a couple of years ago, we rebuilt our company website on content in a headless manner, and I blogged about that. And this time, as soon as this came out, I was desperate to. So I wanted to see and have first-hand experience on how to implement it and how to use it. So yeah, this is my blog post here about it's a brief intro to what it is, but also actually my sort of journey on implementing it as well. So we implemented it.
Tell me about that journey.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
Sure.
Was it more than you? Was it multiple people, or was it just you? I'm kind of curious right there.
Just me. And in previous years, I haven't been coding as much as I used to. So I actually had a really great time. It was sort of hands off. This is mine.
Nice.
I wanted to jump in. I think I shared a screenshot with you privately, Brian, at one point, my Git commit history. I was quite happy that
Yep.
the majority of the commits fit within 1 hour.
Yep.
I was smashing away trying to do it, but yeah, it was all me. I wanted to dive in and do the end-to-end one. So I did all three aspects of the implementation, I guess, which we could talk about. I guess there's an SDK that you need to put in. There's some content modeling changes, and then there's the changes to your preview site markup.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about those three things. I think that's, what do you need to know if you're starting with this? And you're using .NET Core for Luminary.com, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Favorite technology that we're using for all of our projects as well. So Annie and I are very close in our technical preferences when it comes to solutions at times. But, the first thing here, installing the Smart Link Sdk is what you've got in the blog post. So was this hard? Was it easy? Just, curious on your...
It was super easy. Actually, I already had the edit links in there, and it cleaned up my code quite a bit putting this in. So the beautiful thing is they've provided this SDK over a CDN, so you don't even need to install it in your site. All you really need to do is essentially drop in a script tag and a CSS style sheet.
Nice.
So that's the installation of the Smart Link SDK. I've sort of blended two steps here in the blog post, the SDK and changing the markup, because they're linked together. But yeah, so the actual SDK is just drop it in.
Nice. That's fantastic. And I know we've talked as MVPs, we've talked about the whole, well, wait a minute, we don't want to add in JavaScript on a live website and possibly affect performance, right? In today's world, that's so important to not do. So I think there's even a pretty easy way to basically make sure this is only showing up from a preview mode standpoint as well, right? Did you get that in there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's again, in any language that you're using to build your site. So I'm using .NET Core here. Very commonly, people are building Jamstack sites as well, and we've got a couple on the go that we'll be using Web Spotlight for as well. Either way, what you do want to do is make sure you just simply only include these scripts if your site is running in preview mode, or if it's the preview deployment. So in .NET Core, it's as simple as a little environment tag helper. And on the Jamstack side, they've got code samples for React or Gatsby, whatever you want to just drop it in simply. Yep. So that's for the actual including of the scripts. But then the next step that you're showing here, this might look like a lot of code. This is absolutely not required. But I thought, as usual, I wrote the code, and then I wasn't happy with how neat it was, so I wanted to write a nice, neat little helper. So this is code you could just, if you've got a .NET Core site, you could essentially copy and paste this in, create a little tag helper. What it allows you to do is not have to code in that check into your preview site. It's basically there, as long as you've got the an environment variable set to preview, well, not production. It allows you to just simply put little attributes on your markup, and the rest is handled.
Nice.
So hopefully that helps a few other people out there implementing.
Well,
it was my first time writing a custom .NET Core tag helper and they're pretty
Nice.
cool.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I'll steal it for my project. That's for sure. I'll just be honest with you. I mean,
Go for
borrow.
it.
I should say borrow. Borrow is the right word. Okay, so you've got the SDK. You've got the code in there to detect it. Was there a last step for basically putting it all together?
Sure. So that's all you had to do to, I guess, enable your site to be used in Web Spotlight. But you do need to then configure it on the CMS end. So there's a couple of sides to that. First, you need Web Spotlight to be turned on. Oh, sorry. Before I go any further, I would say it's worth doing that on your site, even if you don't have Web Spotlight, because it's actually even if you don't have Web Spotlight, that Smart Link SDK will give your preview site some really nice markup of what's editable. And if you don't have Web Spotlight, you can still click the edit links and it will link you back into the CMS to the right point to edit. And that's available for even without
That's
Web
a fantastic
Spotlight.
tip.
That's the hot tip I've got there. So go ahead and do it.
That's fantastic.
But then the next step, is configuring the CMS. So it wasn't very hard to configure the CMS. Obviously, you need to make some slight changes to your content model, but only very slight. So obviously what you want to do is teach Web Spotlight what to show in this tree that you've got on the screen right here. So that's up to you. Web Spotlight doesn't automatically just decide what is in there. It gives you, as soon as it's activated, it gives you a sample homepage type, which is that one they've got up the top there that says content home. And it gives you a sample content type called page. Now, you don't have to use them, but if you wanted to, you could. So for a new project, you might use them. For an existing project like ours, it's up to you how you adjust your content model. The key there is there's a new element type for content types called subpages. So subpages works very similarly to linked items, but it's specifically for Web Spotlight. It's specifically to teach Web Spotlight what the subpages are in the tree here. So you could add that to an existing content type that you're already using to model your structure, or you could choose to use the one they give you in the page. So in my case, I already had a navigation page type. So all I needed to do was go in and add a subpages field to my page type, create new drafts of my navigation items, and make sure that the subpages were in the new element exactly the same way they were in the linked items, and that was done basically. So that's all I really needed to do. I just needed to teach Web Spotlight how my structure worked by using the new subpages element.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, you're basically just lining it up so the system knows where to go and what to show. I like it. Okay.
Yeah. And it makes sense really, because you don't want it to show every content item in the system in this structure. Right. That's the point. You already have the content and assets module in there that shows literally everything and has the full text search and everything. What this is for is to narrow it down to just the structured elements, to give marketers or any editor really a nice visual way to quickly find it that represents the way the site is actually structured on the web.
And I think when this feature first came out, that was some of the feedback that we gave the team at Content, is that, hey, what if I have tens of thousands of products in this one area of my website? Am I going to put all this right here in this hierarchy? And the answer is you could, but I don't think you'd want to, right? That's not the purpose. You're not necessarily going to have your marketing team editing portions of a product detail page for 10,000 different products. That should be hopefully structured content that's coming from the content model all the way. But this is meant more for
exactly.
the landing pages and the home page and the places where you do want the variability and the marketing touch or the editing touch in those areas. So I think it's a beautiful fit.
Although it's worth saying, so for example, our blogs, we might have hundreds or I would say thousands, but that's not true, of blogs, and you don't need them all in the tree. You probably want the blog page in the tree, but it's worth saying that the preview site is still usable inside that preview tab. So if you follow Web Spotlight through and click blog and you're in the preview, you can click a blog post in your preview site and it will still load inside Web Spotlight and you still get that nice editing experience. So it's really the best of both worlds, I think. So yeah, we've chosen not to link to our blog posts with a subpages element because that's just unwieldy. That's not the way it works. We don't put a blog in the site by adding it to a menu. We just add a blog post, and the listing page always lists them by date. So that makes sense. That makes sense for us. But you can add new pages. If you do want them in the menu, you can add them through that interface as well. If you see in that screenshot there, the triple dots next to Content Home, if you were to click on that, there's options for adding a new page.
So the nice thing is, again, you don't have to jump around in the interface. It's one spot to do edit and add right from the same thing. So it's kind of neat. One other note, I think, we've covered some tips, some things not to do, but we should also probably mention that if you're getting started, you do need to know that Web Spotlight does basically come with a little bit of a premium. It's a feature you add into your subscription. The pricing's right there on the pricing page. You can find that out. It's not too bad, but do know that's there's some cost involved, of course. But like Andy said, I think the value is still there from a preview editing standpoint to use the technique to make the preview editing experience even better for your team. So
exactly, and that's almost like a stepping stone to it, I guess, as well. And if you are wondering or evaluating, or if you're wondering how hard it's going to be to implement, or then if you have a preview site already, you can go in and do most of the implementation yourself, and then the rest of it would be basically get it enabled and configure the model.
Well, if you want to find out more about Web Spotlight, you can definitely go to webspotlight.content.ai, or you can check out content.ai, or you can read Andy's fabulous blog post. I'll have a link to it in the show notes when we're done pushing this up. But Andy, I think we could sit here and talk all morning, all evening if we wanted to, but I know you have your day job to get to. I want to thank you very much for being on the show, and we're going to have you back again because we definitely want to talk a little bit about experience as well, because at the end of the day, both of us are certified in both products, and we're pretty happy about that as MVPs. So,
yeah. Absolutely. Thanks very much for having me, Brian. I'm absolutely looking forward to being back, and in much less than 5 years.
Yes, much less. I'm going to hold you to it, sir. All right. Thanks. And everyone, this has been Kentico Rocks podcast, episode number 35, all about Web Spotlight for content. Until next time.